and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and today we are doing a very special Game Week 13 tier list video where we're going to be talking about players that you might be thinking about selling. Which players can you afford to remove and replace in your team? There's loads of injury updates in this video as well that have happened over the international break, so we're going to keep you in the know on what kind of players you should be looking to move on. Guys, if you do enjoy this one-off video, please do drop a like. Maybe we'll think about doing it some more in the future, and do subscribe if you are new around here as well. Let's get started. So guys, a slightly different tier list today, guys, because we're talking about sells, obviously. Players we might be thinking about sells. So I divided this up into 5 categories. First of all, our must-keeps. These are players I would never even consider selling, really. I would definitely want to keep these players. We've got try to keep, so I would ideally like to keep these players unless it's an absolute emergency, I guess. We've got optional keeps and sells, so players that maybe if you have a player you really want to bring into your team, these are the kind of players that you could potentially sacrifice, but I don't think it's absolutely essential. We've got tries to sell, so players you should probably try and sell if it's possible, and of course must sells, players that you need to remove as an absolute priority. Now, starting off with the 30th most popular transfer out of Game Week 13 so far, and it's going to be Neto. And Neto, I would say, is a player I would try to sell because it looks like he is probably going to be out for this game week. He's got a hamstring injury. He's very doubtful for Game Week 13, so it's not likely that he'll be back this week, but you never know. In a couple of game weeks, maybe he's going to be back, and because he's a cheap player, I don't think he's an absolute must sell in this scenario. Our next player is going to be Mbeumo, and he goes straight in the must keep category. I don't know why people are selling this guy. Maybe it's because he's got a fixture against Arsenal. Yeah, I guess it's a tough fixture, but after that, the fixtures are so good for Brentford, and Mbeumo's just been the star of the show on penalties as well, doing super well. And even against Arsenal, if anyone's going to score in this game, I'm going to back the man in form, and that is Brian Mbeumo. So I really would like to get into the heads of people who are selling Mbeumo. I just don't think it's a good idea at all. A must keep as far as I'm concerned. Darwin Núñez is going to come in next, and although I do think there is a chance he doesn't start against City, and even if he does, I don't know if we expect too much from him. He's a player very much in form and a player I'd like to own for the long term there. So I would try and keep Darwin Núñez if possible. Next up is Botman. I think he is probably maybe a must sell at this point. Surely, I don't even know many people who still have him in their team, but obviously he has got a long-term injury. But there is some good news on him. He's apparently there's not going to be any surgery required, so he's progressing quite well in that regard. Maybe he's going to be back soon, but there's not enough information out there to allow us to make a definitive decision. So I would say he is a must sell. Deal with that problem now, but he wouldn't be like my #1 must sell, but still try and sell him if you still have him for whatever reason. Next up is Edison. I think he's probably an optional kind of guy. There's not really too much information on him at the moment. Apparently he's got kind of a small knock. I think he could be fine, but it's difficult to say at this point. So I think we'll sit on the fence as far as Edison is concerned. Obviously the next fixtures are pretty tough, but a goalkeeper transfer might not be necessarily worth it at this moment in time. So he's going to go in the optional category for now, alongside Bruno Fernandes, who I don't think you have to sell him. You know, a guy on penalties. His form is not horrendous, even though Manchester United are not scoring a huge amount of goals. Like, he is involved a little bit there as well. So I would consider selling him if you had another player you'd really like to buy in your team. You know, if you really want to hop onto a Saka or a Bowen, or, you know, you want to save some money for a Salah or something like that, then fair enough, you know, remove Fernandes. But he's not a priority unless you have another player you'd like to bring in. Same kind of situation with Martinelli. Don't love him as a pick, but, you know, he's an interesting differential. He could do quite well. That price is a bit annoying. You know, he's quite expensive, and I'm sure you have your eye on some other players you quite like, but I think, you know, he's not a priority issue in your team. There's going to be other issues in your team more than likely, so he's going to be in the optional category. Another player I'm going to put in a similar situation is probably going to be Kyle Walker. I would maybe even arguably try to keep him because he's fit, available, seems to be nailed on in this Man City team. I'm going to put him in optional as though, because the next 3 fixtures are quite tough, and 5.3 million is quite a lot. But if you bought him for a cheaper price, if you bought him for like 5 million, I would be really hesitant about removing him. I would think about keeping him. Next up, Saka, another player who I think has to go in the must-keep category. Like, I don't understand, why would people sell Saka right now? He's fit, he's available, he's more than likely going to be on penalties, and we've got some good fixtures coming up for Arsenal as well. So I would really like to keep Saka in my FPL team right now. There's not really concerns there about injuries or anything. So, yeah, I don't get it. He is a player I would want to keep. So, again, another player, if you are someone considering selling the likes of Saka or Mbeumo, tell me why, because obviously there are a lot of you out there. I'd like to understand the reasoning behind that, because I am not feeling it. Next up, Almiron. Now, he is flagged, but from what I can tell, he should be fine. I'm not really too concerned about his flag, but at the same time, you know, at 6.3 million, that kind of price range, there are some other players that look kind of interesting right now that you might want to go for instead of Almiron, and I'm just not fully convinced with these fixtures coming up for Newcastle as well. Got Chelsea up next. It's a tough fixture. Typically, I don't love this pick. He's been a bit rotation prone as well. He's just an optional player. Like, if you want to sell him, then that's absolutely fine. But I wouldn't be concerned about his injury. Doku, I think I would probably put in a similar situation, but I am going to drop him down here to try to sell because I don't think he's going to start next game week. I think Doku is a player who's going to cause you a lot of headaches, whether he's going to be starting or not. Particularly in the tougher games, we don't really expect Doku to start. It's more likely going to be Foden and Grealish on either side, on each wing. So Pep Guardiola can keep control of those difficult games, such as Liverpool, that we do have next. So I actually think it's kind of unlikely Doku is going to start in this game, but in the future, maybe he does well. But at the same time, there's just other 6.5, 7 million midfielders who I would prefer to go for right now. So yeah, Doku, I would possibly try to sell, even if you only recently brought him in. Next up is going to be Douglas Luiz, penalty merchant, you know, on set pieces as well. Maybe he can get some bits and bobs from that. Don't expect too much from him at 5.6 million, but definitely not a player you should prioritize selling. So I'm going to put him in the optional category. If you've got your eye on another player around his price range, fair enough, sell him. But certainly not a player I would feel any desperate need to sell. Next up, Nketiah. Dangerous one. We've got Trossard playing as the central striker. We've got Jesus probably going to come back after the international break. Nketiah is going to cause you problems in the long run, similar to Doku. So for that reason, he is going to probably go for me in the try to sell category. The problem is with Nketiah is there's not too much going on around his price range. There's not too many forwards that you guys are going to be interested in. So if you can't sell him, I think that's fine to maybe hold him onto him for one more week. Maybe try and free up some budget elsewhere to try and upgrade him to someone else. Next up, Trippier. Probably try and keep him if you can. Like, I know Newcastle are missing some defenders at the moment, and we're a little bit concerned there, but Trippier, he withdrew from the England team. Apparently that was for personal reasons. There's no injury there, so that's not really a concern. He's not flagged or anything, and he won't be flagged either. But at the same time, he is an expensive defender. I can understand why some people might want to sell him, particularly if we're worried about Newcastle at the moment. But we'll try and keep him. I really would try and keep him. And another player I would try and keep for the same team is Isak. So he has got an orange kind of flag on him at the moment, an orange Dorito of death there. But apparently he's going to be fine. Apparently it's looking really positive for Isak, and he's going to be back and playing for Newcastle from maybe Gameweek 13, could be Gameweek 14, but it's looking good very soon. And we know Isak, particularly when other forwards in the same team are injured, Isak is just going to be so good. He's going to be so explosive. He has that talent if he can get the minutes. I think he is going to be able to get the minutes when he is 100% fit, which should be super soon. So Isak, really, really nice player. A player who I would even consider buying. If you already have him, I would definitely be trying to keep him in my fantasy team. Next up, it's Matty Cash. Yeah, difficult one. Like, it's a difficult fixture against Spurs, but actually in the away games, we see Cash push up quite far up the pitch and actually gets most of his attacking opportunities in the away games. After that, we've got Bournemouth as well, which is a nice fixture. So you could sell him now. It would be perfectly reasonable to sell him now, particularly if you've got your eye on another player, but I don't think you need to. It's an optional kind of play here. I would maybe give him 2 more game weeks if you want to, but if you also want to sell him, that's fine as well. I think there's no problem with having a Matty Cash in your squad for another couple of game weeks, to be honest. Now, Wilson is not looking good. There's reports that his injury is going to be 4 to 6 weeks. So, yeah, he could be out for the remainder of 2023, which is not good news, really, for Wilson. It's good news for Isak, but really not good news for Wilson. And at 7.9 million, you just want to be replacing him if he's going to be injured for a long time. Just not really what we're feeling at the moment, is it? Estupiñán, he is presumably still injured. Difficult to get exact information on what's going there. Obviously, the injury happened before the international break, so maybe we're going to get an update by the end of the week. Of course, we'll cover all of the injury updates when we get more certain information by the end of the week. We'll be covering all of that on this YouTube channel. so don't forget to make sure those notifications are on. But yeah, Estupinian for me. Right now, I would probably be trying to sell him or working out a way to sell him because I don't think we can be too confident of a start this game. But in general, I don't know. Maybe he could become a player that we want again at some point in the future, but we need to get this injury cleared up first of all. Højlund is probably going to be a player to sell as well. He's presumably out injured for this game week. Don't expect him to be playing, so try to sell him if at all possible. Next up, Ollie Watkins. I would try and keep him. I really would try and keep him as well, at least for the next 2 game weeks. Spurs and Bournemouth are really good opportunities for attacking returns for Aston Villa. We know how many goals they score. Watkins has been in pretty good form. He would be one of my priority try to keep players, but at the same time, at 8.4 million, I can understand why you might not want him long-term in your team. I personally like him long-term, but some people don't. I don't think he's an absolute must-keep, but he would be a player who I would strongly try to keep unless there is another forward who you just desperately want to get into your FPL team right now. Now, next up, we have got Ferguson. He's got a new hamstring injury, which is not too promising. For that reason, I think we need to put him in the sell category, unfortunately. I don't think he's going to be back for Game Week 13. Maybe not even Game Week 14 either. So a must sell there for me. Van de Ven, another long-term absentee. He's going to be out for months, unfortunately, for him. So therefore, another must sell on the list alongside Dan Burn. Long-term, another few months out for him. Long-term, yeah. Get rid. Let's try and remove these kind of players. They are your priority sells kinds of players. We've got Ødegaard up next. Really, really difficult to get information about Ødegaard because it's about Arteta, who never reveals anything about his injured players. And I couldn't find anything elsewhere about Ødegaard. So he is presumably still injured, but honestly, who knows? But even if he was fit, would I love to have him in my team for 8.3 million anyway? Not particularly. I'll be happy to sacrifice him either way, whether he was fit or not. So for that reason, he is going to go in the try to sell category. I would try and sell Ødegaard if that's possible for you guys. Next up, Julian Alvarez. Don't think you need to sell him particularly, but I can understand the appeal. His attacking returns have just not been as frequent recently. You know, I think it's 3 attacking returns in his last 7 Premier League games for Man City, which is not quite what we want, is it? We want a little bit more from our FPL players, and the fixtures over the next 3 aren't amazing necessarily, so it's not a player who you would be desperate to keep, but at the same time, it's not a priority sell. I think he'll tick on very nicely. He's still probably going to get you an attacking return every other game. So if that's good enough for you, then, you know, crack on, keep him. Particularly if you can't afford to move to a, you know, a Watkins or a Darwin, then why not just keep Alvarez? But if you've got like a differential, cheaper forward that you quite like the look of right now, you know, I can understand why you might want to sell Alvarez, but not a priority sell. Definitely not a priority sell. Next up, Heung-min Son. I'm going to put him up here in the try to keep category as well. Watkins and Son, I could arguably move into must keep, but I'm not quite going to go there. I am a little bit worried about Son without Maddison, and Son is obviously a very expensive player at 9.7 million as well, and he might be a player that you need to sacrifice in order to make other moves in your FPL team. And if that's the case, then fair enough. I can understand selling Son. But in an ideal world, you would be looking to keep him in your FPL team. I think he's still a good pick. I like this fixture against Aston Villa up next. I think it's a good one and a real opportunity for some attacking returns. And Spurs fixtures in general, particularly for, you know, attacking players, I actually don't think they're so bad over the next few. So I would really be making a strong effort to try and keep Son in your team, if that's at all possible. He says he's fine as well. I know some people are worried about him being injured for South Korea, but he reckons he's fine. So I'm not too worried about that one personally. Next up, Mitoma. His injury doesn't sound serious from the quote, so I'm not too worried about that one. If you are worried, I understand. Maybe he's kind of an optional kind of player. You could potentially think about removing him. But I don't think he's a player that you strongly have to sell or anything like that. You know, it's going to be kind of up to you. I would probably try and keep him unless there's another midfielder that you would love to get in your FPL team. I think he's going to be fine for this week. I'm not massively concerned, but there's a small doubt. There's small doubts for Mitoma, but not huge doubts, I guess. Next up, Ben White. He is also flagged. But I'm going to put him in try to keep. I will try to keep Ben White. You know, he's an Arsenal defender. We are all looking to get Arsenal defenders. I know Saliba and Zinchenko are very popular transfers in right now. Well, if you've already got a Ben White in your team, why not just keep him? You know, he serves that purpose. He is flagged. Apparently, that was because he has been carrying a little bit of an injury for the last month or so. He was granted a rest against Burnley, so he could just help start to recover, you know, because he has been carrying an injury. He's been given the international break to try and, you know, help recover as well. So now he's had like a few weeks off, you know, 3 weeks off. That's very, very good for Ben White, and that's going to give him an opportunity to get back in his full 100% sharpness and be available to play very, very regularly for Arsenal. So Ben White, again, another player I'm not concerned about. I don't think he is going to be out for Game Week 13. I think he should play in 13, 14, 15. I'm pretty happy about that one. At 5.8 million, he is a little expensive. Don't get me wrong. Would I be buying him? Probably not. You know, I'd probably just go for a Saliba at a slightly cheaper price. But if you already have Ben White, no real reason to sell him, in my opinion. I would be trying to keep him, if that's possible for you guys. Which leaves just 2 players left. First of all, Romero. Now, he's not quite as severe as Van der Ven. Van der Ven's going to be out for months. Romero's got 2 more games that he's going to be missing for. At a 5 million defender, presumably a lot of you guys have got defensive cover that maybe you could cover him for a couple of weeks. I would try and sell him, but he is not an absolute must sell. He's not as much of a priority sell as some of these other players, in my opinion. So Romero, if you can sell him, do it. If you can cover him for a couple of weeks and actually there are other bigger issues in your team, then I would not sell him. That's probably as far as I would go. Try and sell him. You don't absolutely have to, I guess. Unlike the final player for this tier list, which is going to be James Maddison, he is probably going to be the biggest must sell of this entire video because he is out for ages. He's going to be out for months. Another long-term absentee there. And at 7.9 million, that is a pretty expensive midfielder. There's loads of midfielders we're all looking at getting in our FPL teams right now who can provide us with some big, big points. So if you've got Maddison, he ain't going to be getting you no points for a long, long time. So let's try and find a new midfielder for our FPL teams that can replace him and do really well. And if you want to hear about some of the buys, make sure you check out yesterday's video where we did a similar tier list, but for players that you should be bringing in. So guys, basically, in summary, if you've got players on the bottom 2 rows, these are kind of the players I would be looking to remove as a priority. Try and find a player maybe in yesterday's tier list to replace them with. And yeah, anyone above that, really, I don't think you have to sell them. And I certainly would not be looking to sell the likes of Mbumo, Saka, Watkins, Son, Darwin even. I like these players. I'd want to have them in my FPL team. So try and keep them if you can. And I think you can. I believe you can. I believe in you. So there you go, guys. Let me know what you think about this tier list. Do you think I've got it right? Do you think I've got it wrong? Is there any player on this tier list that is in your opinion, the wrong position? They should be in a different position. Let me know. Tell me where they should be on this tier list. If there's any other players that you're thinking about selling who are not included in this tier list, let me know in the comment section, and we'll be going through some of those comments and replying to them and trying to give a perspective on whether you should be selling some of those lesser owned players, lesser sold players, whether you should be keeping them or actually selling them from your team. So let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. If you did enjoy, do drop a like for this kind of sell tier list video. I know some of you guys really like this video, but yeah, it's good to know from you guys and get your opinion whether I should be doing this more often or not. Of course, subscribe if you're new around here. Check out another video if you want to. And also, guys, we will be streaming tonight. Yes, the Monday streams are back as we are about to kind of enter the process of Game Week 13. So join me on stream tonight. That'll be at 7 PM UK time. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.